It's where we review movies and acting and TV and things and whatever we want.
Yes, we do, don't we, Marnie?
Yes, we do.
Yes. So who are we cricketing today?
Well, today actually we're not cricketing, we're doing something a little bit different. We have an interview with a real live cinematographer.
Yes, and here he is. We have Sean Smith here. Yay! Welcome, Sean. So I know you from Filmbase, which is a film school, and you're, what would you call yourself there? What would you...
So I'm the course coordinator for Australian Filmbase in Melbourne, and I also help out with Brisbane as well. We have Brisbane courses.
Yeah, and I've been on the course. We've actually eight months. Yeah, so I've done 8 months of the course, and
nerds.
It's been amazing actually. So yeah, thanks for that. It's been great. But we've got you here today to talk to you about cinematography specifically, because we just thought our viewers might want to kind of understand a little bit more about making films and understand that you have a lot of that background. I'd like to sort of hand it over to you and give us maybe an idea of how you started out, what's your background, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Sure. So I might start by saying that I wouldn't consider myself a cinematographer.
Okay.
Stop it. Of course you are.
I'm not part of the guilds or the associations or anything like that. And I think that there are people that dedicate their life to the pursuit of being really, really great DPs and cinematographers.
Yeah.
And for me, my background creatively was in visual arts, and so in painting and drawing, and also in photography. So when I wanted to pursue a career in film, it made sense that cinematography was a natural extension. So rather than shooting stills and doing stills composition, to do cinematography and just hold the button down to record rather than a single shot or a single frame. And that was probably a bit of a naivety on my part, because I realised that as much as I liked that, when I got more immersed into film, that it was more about the storytelling, and not just the visual storytelling that I was interested in. So although I can do cinematography and I understand some principles, I'm not dedicating my life to pursuing cinematography like some of the really brilliant cinematographers out there. But I definitely have a very strong appreciation for it, so happy to talk about it.
No, fantastic. So where did you get, when I'm doing the course with, and the focus is on independent filmmaking, and where did you get started with all that? Like you're saying you've been from creative arts, but where did you kind of have your introduction to start making
in a really roundabout way. So into film in general, from my dad. My dad was one of those people that just loved cinema, was always go to the movies. We had home cinemas at home, from CRT TVs to projectors all the way through growing up, and we had collections of movies. And he was also not so good at reading the censorship guidelines. So I remember watching Pulp Fiction when it came out in '94, being very, very young, and just having my mind opened up to this world, which was probably a little bit premature. But that was so my interest in film started really early.
Yeah.
I then had some friends growing up with handycams, and we got into the habit of sort of filming everything and editing things. But again, I didn't really think of it as being a viable career pursuit. Growing up in the suburbs of the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne, there wasn't any examples of people that had gone to film school or had gone on to become filmmakers. So I let it sort of park and sort of sit as a dream that would be someone else's dream, I guess.
Yeah.
And I went to work, and I worked in design and various fields. But then I was overseas for a while and started the advent of GoPro, and sort of these kinds of sort of action cams came about. And I was very into snowboarding and motorbike riding and scuba diving. So I started filming a lot of these things. Me doing these things badly, by the way. But sort of as I was learning, I realised that a lot of what I was doing was just taking the footage and putting it onto iMovie and cutting it up. So I then got a bit more interested in editing, and so just through that process of kind of learning by myself, I started to talk to more people who are interested in it, and then I realised there was an opportunity to help produce financially some independent filmmakers who are doing documentaries and those kinds of things. And so my sphere of, I guess, my friendship circles, my social circles started to shift, and I then got exposure to people who were actually making films. And so growing up, I didn't think that was an actual pursuit or a real tangible thing that I could do. And then I was, sort of later in life, wow, people do this for a living, and of course they do, and not just in Hollywood. And so that was where I thought I should do a course.
Yeah, right, okay.
And so that was probably about 7 years ago now. And so I'd come back to Australia and decided to look into what was around. And I didn't want to go do a full-time course. I thought that would be, it's not my style of learning. And I'd gotten some feedback that, just because you go and do 4 years of university degree in film doesn't necessarily set you up to make films.
No, it's
so I thought I'd start with a short course, which is the course that you've done.
Okay,
so,
right.
So I did that course and I loved it, and so immediately after that went on to make my own short films and immersed myself in volunteering and crew roles, and I've been on feature films, and I've been wherever I could get experience. I just made that almost more than my full-time career at the time. So I was pursuing, everything I could, waking up, watching lots of documentaries, reading lots, gradually skilling up in camera department, in sound department. I worked sound on a bunch of films, which was something that was completely foreign to me. And in doing all that, in the background, the person who was running the film course in Melbourne was also, her career was starting to take off.
You're right.
So she approached me, and the owner of the course, Colin, who between the two of them and me, we discussed that I would start training to take over the course. And so I shadowed her on a couple of courses, and then eventually I took over. And then now, since we've grown it, so we include the advanced course, which is what you're doing. Which is
advanced directing course. It's really, really good, actually. It gives you a lot more focus than just the basic course. It's a good sort of flow on from it. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's about, my intention with that course was taking the people who were really serious about making their own films and giving them an environment where they had some structure and it's the support and framework of a course environment, but they got to collaborate with people that they might not otherwise collaborate with, but they also have a greater sense of autonomy. So a lot more independence in how you create the film, the type of film that you want to create, but also that we would invest in making the quality of the film. It's not a student film which is being used as a device for learning. It's actually, we're going to work on this as a project with the view of making it something that has an audience and it has some sort of appeal. But that's a roundabout way. And then so through that process, that was the segue, and making that decision to do the course sort of launched me into this. And now I'm producing 2 funded short films, both of which have feature scripts attached to them with the potential to go on. And so my goal is in the next couple of years to produce, either write, direct, and produce, or just produce someone else's feature film. So I've worked in feature films, but I haven't actually sort of helmed a start to finish project, and that for me is like the graduation. It's kind
of like the next step, isn't it? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So I think that covered the first question that we had for you anyway, which is what you like about, or what drew you to cinematography. But it sounds like you had more of a learning by experience rather than any sort of course, which is interesting.
That's right. So the course format that I did is very hands-on, and so and what I tell my students, and what I realise myself, is that a short course and any learning, I guess, you only get out as much as you put in. And for me, because I already had cameras from photography, I was fortunate that it was accessible for me to be able to do a lot of experimentation, a lot of hands-on things, so I could make my own things. And I realised that was where the huge delta of what I think I knew and what I realised is to be, it became quite evident. And just even looking at really good cinematographers and how they work, and how much thought goes into things like designing, like set design, which for me, I had thought, we get really nice lens, we shoot with a shallow depth of field, make sure we've got good exposure, and there you go, job's done.
Bob's your uncle, that's all there is.
And then just the appreciation for how much time and thought goes into lighting, and the difference that lighting can make. So take away the need to have a base level of exposure for your film, but to create a mood and to shape shadows in a way that will give you a certain look and feel. And that was something for me that I was really excited about, and I was excited about how much of a beginner I was. So coming from an art background, I understood light, and I understood using things like shadow and contrast and highlight, but in a very different way. Like the application of it in like portrait painting and stuff is so different from when you're lighting scenes for film, and then the technical side of it as well. I'm quite technically inclined, so I liked that. I knew nothing about these kinds of lights and how they work and all the technology that's associated with doing that, and cameras and lenses and sensors and oh my,
there's so
all those
much.
things. It was just like someone had given me an open encyclopedia, and I could fill the pages as much as I like. It's really exciting.
So yeah, I mean, flowing on from that, from one thing that I was learning from the course was the roles as well. With that are, with everyone on set, everyone has a specific role. Talk to us a little bit about the relationship between the director and the cinematographer, because Marty and I have had this conversation.
We were discussing that because it's so it's basically whose artistic vision takes precedent. Is there one that takes, in your experience, is there one that takes precedent over the other?
Yeah.
So I think it shouldn't be competitive. I think that's something that people, because it looks a certain way, is that the contribution of the director or is it the contribution of the cinematographer? Now, in short, I would say both. It should be a collaborative process, and really great examples of great films are where the directors have worked very closely with their cinematographers. So Roger Deakins is a great example of a cinematographer who works really collaboratively in the pre-production stages, and there's an excellent video you can watch on his work with Denis Villeneuve in the preparation for Blade Runner 2049, and they have this great story where they worked with a storyboard artist and the two of them in a hotel in Montreal for I think a month or something,
right.
And they just filled the walls with storyboard art, and they really, they thought about it. So the director, in my mind, is contributing the shot list. So they're saying, this is the kind of shot I want to see. So as we're breaking down the script, there's a moment of dialogue where I think the emphasis needs to be on this character and this line delivery. And I think that would be a mid-shot. And then I'd want to pull back from that mid-shot, and maybe we cut to a cutaway of them doing whatever it is they're doing. So the director is translating the written word into visual language. The cinematographer is then translating that into the actual image. So they're responsible for the principal photography and everything that makes up the frame. So it's kind of a collaborative process, but there is a blend or a grey area where what director is contributing is being taken by the cinematographer, but then they're also layering that with their own creative input and vision. And you'll notice that certain cinematographers have a style, as do certain directors. But I think what most people appreciate when you're watching something would actually be more the hand of the director. So then you get this concept of auteur directors who have a particular style, because it's their voice and their vision that's being pushed through. And, a very, I guess not amateur, but perhaps a less experienced cinematographer might be less vocal about their contribution visually. They're more about executing the vision of someone else. Whereas a more experienced cinematographer, so someone like a Roger Deakins, for example, you might find that they are being asked or consulted in a big way because they've got so much experience with such talented people. So again, it would depend on the relationship. If you're in the indie space, I would say if you're a first-time writer-director or you're an up-and-coming writer-director, one of the best things you can do is find a great DP or a great cinematographer to partner with, and to get them involved early, set them on a path where they really clearly can articulate your vision, and you're not having that sort of combative discussions on set, and they are really empowered to then make their own decisions. And you'll find that if they're really experienced, then their wealth of experience will lift up the quality of your product. So I think that's it's an interesting one, and I guess it depends on the relationship. So when I'm acting in the role of a producer, and part of my role is to help bring the team together, so if I'm working closely with a writer-director, I would try to find a director of photography that will work well with that director. So the language that they use and the way that they talk, particularly if it's a newish director, and that tends to be the sort of space that I play in, that person might not feel super comfortable with someone who's a bit of a veteran, who talks very technically, who doesn't, they might have a great body of work, but they're probably not going to be as nurturing. They might just be frustrated that the director can't talk to them in the language that they want. So finding that match I think is important, and that I believe that collaboration, so to kind of come back to the original question, I think that it should be collaborative, and you should feel kind of elements of both in the outcomes, but it's different for everyone.
That's such a good way of putting it. That it's not adversarial, it's a team, and you have to be in sync to make the best final product.
And I guess there's probably a lot of consultation that goes on beforehand, that needs to go on beforehand to get in sync in that sort of scenario. I don't know whether it would be beneficial to even do some smaller, if you're going to have the director and cinematographer work together on a project, get them doing some work prior to that, do you think? Or is it Do you feel that's beneficial versus going straight into...
Definitely. So I'm a big believer in homework and doing the preparation. So and in my mind, it's simple things like watch films and then pick the areas of those films that you think are transferable to what you're trying to make. Yeah. So there's a great, we live and work in a time where most things are accessible for us. There's great resources, like there's a site called Film Grab, where you can find still images from hundreds or maybe even thousands of really great examples of cinematography. And so as a director, doing your homework, like your job is to translate what's in your head into something that other people can see. And if a lot of that exists and you can take it from really good examples and make even like something like a mood book or something, or a mood board, you can share that and you can get on the same page very quickly. And so things like shots. So when I'm talking to directors who have like specific shots in their mind, it's really easy if they say, this is going to be like a one or like a long tracking shot, sort of like the start of Goodfellas. And I go, great, okay. And then what we're going to see here is, and then we can take our iPhones and we can go, so we're kind of pushing in like this, just at the table having a conversation. Like, yeah, great, but I would actually want the frame to be wider. Great. And people who potentially are really good at sort of storytelling and working with actors might not necessarily be that experienced in the visual execution of that. So giving them those tools or having those conversations would be a really useful way for them to say, now I'm sitting with the cinematographer, they can see something that I can see in a physical sense, and you remove that ambiguity and that sort of lost in translation, and so when they show up, they can be like, okay, I know exactly how we're going to light this, I know how we're going to frame it, I know what equipment we're going to set. So depending on the scale of the production, how much time they have to prepare, doing things like storyboards, like in the example of the Blade Runner 2049 preparation, I think that's, if you can do it, it's a fantastic way of kind of going almost frame by frame. So the film that I've just come off shooting, the DP and the director actually went and did site recce's together, and so they went, and so they were really prepared. They had a really well formed shot list, and so that was excellent. So then when we got to set, they knew exactly. Now there was obviously some room for sort of iteration, and pivoting in that, but most of their work, like in terms of that kind of getting their minds in sync, had been done, and it meant that the director was able to really focus on the performances of the actors and just trusted that the camera department was doing it. And of course, there's that moment we have the monitor up and they can check the frame. But I think there would have been only a handful of times where what the cinematographer presented needed to be modified because the director wanted to see something different.
It's a really good point, because I remember when I was doing the first course, and you're learning a lot, but the one thing that I noticed was the people who had actually done the preparation with some of the storyboarding, those scenes were done a lot quicker, and obviously you don't want to, there's a whole time versus quality thing as well when you're obviously making any sort of movie, unless you're making some of these huge blockbusters, which probably still that sort of applies.
Money, right?
Yeah.
So it's still time.
But I noticed that that the people that were prepared and had done the storyboarding, even just a little bit of storyboarding just went smoother, and I think we actually got some better shots. And so I think that's really, really important to have at least an understanding. I think a lot of perception is that with indie filmmaking is you don't necessarily have to do that. You just sometimes pick up the camera and go, which is fine. But I think if you want a better product, it's probably better to do a bit of preparation.
And I think that stuff, it doesn't cost you anything. It actually saves you time and saves you money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so there's because you're working with no budgets or very low budgets, there's a perception that also means you cut corners. And absolutely, you cut corners and you be really guerrilla when you have to be guerrilla. So you might not do hair and makeup for your extras. That's an example of where you can cut corners, save yourself some time and preparation, save yourself some money. But it doesn't mean that you should show up not knowing what frames you want. So if you have got an idea of what frames you want, or even just like the style of how you want it to be shot, like do you want it to be a lot of moving camera? Because that has some practical implications on your setups, how your team works, your camera department, the kind of equipment they need, the kind of camera they use, the kind of lenses they use. So they're really simple things that you can do in preparation that don't cost you anything. And I think if people are really serious about being a director or making a short film or making a feature film, and they want to approach the project with the intention of having something quite good at the end of it, they should be prepared to put the time and effort into that preparation. And that's one of the things that, it is a visual medium and you're telling a story in a certain way. And things like motivated camera movement, if you think about that and you really draw on really great examples and you're able to articulate, this is why I want the camera to move here or in this way, that is always going to be way better. And even, you get great, really high budget blockbuster films where they've just sort of, almost like factory pressed it out and it doesn't have that amount of thought put into it. It's not to say that it's a bad product, but then you see something that's, much lower budget. And there's a great example. There's a film called A Ghost Story. I don't know if you saw that, but
no, I haven't.
It's a great film. And there's some really interesting choices, and the way that they shot it, the way that they've made it. It's a beautifully done film, and it's slow, but when the camera moves, it really, it's kind of like invisible but beautiful at the same time. I think that's really well done. And they don't do too much camera movement. They don't do too much of anything really. It's very minimal and very pared back. And I think it's quite hard to do that and do that well. But I can imagine that even though they shot it really quickly, they had a very small crew, very small budget, that they would have put a lot of thought into how they were going to do it and how they were going to execute it in a way that was effective. And it was effective. It's not for everyone. It's not a sort of a mass audience appeal kind of film, but it's a really good example in my mind of how you can do something that's indie and low budget, but still make it fantastic to watch and fantastic to look at if you put that time and effort into it.
Preparation.
Why do we have to prepare?
It's always the answer to everything. It's hard work. It's not show up and be talented.
How much preparation do we do for cricket tonight? So much.
Given that the industry is so different now from maybe when we were sort of growing up, what advice would you have for people starting out and wanting to get into maybe cinematography, directing, whatever it is?
Well, the concise answer is just start.
Just start.
There's a lot of things available to us now that wouldn't have been available. So the idea of when you wanted to make a film, sort of 15, 20 years ago, and we were shooting on film stock, you needed to have budget to be able to afford the film stock in the first place, and that might have been anywhere from tens to maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the length of the film and how much you'd need. And now there are great examples of filmmakers who've made successful award-winning feature films that they've shot on an iPhone. So if you think that everybody has an iPhone in their pocket and you can go away and you can make a feature film with what you already have, that's just, in my mind, completely democratized the process. So people who want to do it can start with a much lower entry point. But I would suggest that if you're really just sort of finding your way and you're thinking, I want to be a filmmaker, or I want to explore being a filmmaker, go on things like Star Now. And so Star Now is a website that people can go to and find volunteer positions for crew roles, and just go on sets, go on student films and indie films and commercial shoots, whatever you can do, and just do all the roles and just have a crack. And you might find that you start off with a mindset that I want to be a director, but then when you're in the camera department, you go, actually, I don't really want to have to talk to actors. I just really want to work in the camera department and potentially, when I grow up, be a cinematographer, that kind of thing. And but getting that experience as quickly as you can will also help you work out which areas you want to focus on. And I think that if you set out with the idea that it takes kind of 10 years to really become a master of the craft and get to a point where this might become your profession, then that's great. Like, I think you spend that 10 years doing something that you really love, rather than going out and saying, I want to be a director, and then very quickly going, actually it's not really for me, and then doing nothing with it. So I think just start, look at YouTube videos, do short courses, start writing if you want to start with making your own thing. Just write a short story and then work out how you can film it. Compel your friends to be actors for you. And resources that we have now with things like being able to shoot on your iPhone. There's apps like Filmic Pro, which is what has been used for a lot of those iPhone films that have been made, and that's I think about $20 or $22, something like that. Things like mics and lights are much more affordable now, so if you wanted to get a small kit together, you can do it. But it's always a really, really great idea to just be on set, even as a runner, and just to watch what the process looks like and get a taste for what the actual job is. And so I think as quickly as possible, work out which part of the industry makes you most excited and you're passionate about, and then do as much as you can to work in it as quickly as you can. And be prepared to be a beginner, be prepared to learn, be prepared to put the hard work in. And just remember to have fun with it. I think it's one of the most appealing things about this industry is that most people that are in it are doing it because they love it. Like we love movies.
Yeah.
We love,
Yeah.
we will love the output of this. And some people would say, oh well, what we do is important because we save lives. We're doctors or nurses, or we invent the latest cures for cancer and all that sort of stuff. That's true for all those pursuits. But I genuinely believe that if you really have good stories to tell, it can be pivotal for people. And there are so many things that have shaped culture and shaped the way that we think about the world that we've learnt from really good films. And so conversations around human rights and so many different things, mental health and everything, in some cases have been exposed to us in the medium of film and that type of storytelling. I think that's a wonderful and noble reason to get into it. Yes, of course, there are things like Transformers, which are just there to like eat popcorn and sort of have a little bit of escapism and enjoy bayhem, explosions and all that sort of stuff. And that's fine. But yeah, just start. I think that we can always have people that tell stories, and there are really fantastic examples of people who come from places that you might not think that have got these amazing, really, really interesting stories that have come out. And if they didn't start, then we wouldn't have it. So
Cool. Well, we're kind of going to wrap it up now. So thank you very much for coming in today. But
my pleasure.
Two more questions that we're going to ask is favourite, quick ones probably, and favourite movie, and also your best day on set. So
so favourite movie is a really hard one. So
I thought it might have been because in class there's a lot of movies you talk about, and we've never asked. Well, maybe someone asked you what was your favourite movie in class. But I can't remember.
People often ask me.
I don't have a favourite movie, but
I don't know if I have a favourite. There's films that I go back to and watch over and over again. We talked earlier about Pulp Fiction. That's definitely one of the ones that's in the list.
Tarantino.
I love Seven. It's a great film. It's very dark, and it was introduced to me by my stepdad actually, and I remember him saying, I watched this film at the cinema and immediately went to the video store and hired the Nutty Professor or something because it was so disturbing.
Just to bring you back up to a normal level.
Yes, As we do that often. I do that too.
As a teenager, I'm like, oh, I have to watch this. And he was kind of saying, don't watch it. And I was like, I definitely have to watch it. And I watched it, and it is dark, but it's really, really well done. And as I kind of explored more about like why is it good, and I learnt about the way that Fincher just does things like blocking like dialogue scenes, like the stuff that's a little bit sort of at the periphery, it's not really front and center in the film. Is the craft is like peak for me. So I really like that. I really love films by Denis Villeneuve. So Prisoners is again another relatively dark film.
Is there a bit of a theme going here?
Maybe.
Are you okay?
I also love Coming to America. And I just heard today that they're remaking it with Eddie Murphy.
They are, yes, they are. I heard that too. Yeah,
which I'm like quietly excited about. Recently, a couple of favourites of recent times, so kind of like more relevant, as I don't have a specific all-time favourite. I really liked The Nightingale, which is an Australian film by Jennifer Kent, who did The Babadook. Highly recommend that people watch that. It's excellent. It's very dark. It's quite confronting, but very enjoyable. Other ones that were quite good and stand out, Parasite, a lot of people talking about that as an excellent film. Midsummer, also quite good.
I've heard about that one. I'm not going to watch it though. But
it's not that scary. It's interesting. It's stirring and well done. Really great performances in it. I really like Jonah Hill's first film, mid-90s, and I think as a sort of a young guy growing up in the 90s, that was for me. There was a lot of relatable content there, and the way that kind of I can't remember the name of it. It's like not mumblecore, but there's a way of dialogue delivery, and this is where my sort of theoretical knowledge of film starts becoming exhausted. But there's the way that it's delivered. It's kind of how people talk in a sort of teenage mumbly way. And there isn't a term for it, which I've forgotten now. But really, really entertaining and really enjoyable to watch. Best day on set. Every day is a good day. I mean, some are worse than others. Like there's some where you show up and it's 4 or 5 a.m. and it's freezing cold and you spend a couple of hours on the side of a cliff waiting to get a particular establishing shot and you can't get it because the weather turns. They're worse days. Best day. I had a really fun film that we were making in Brisbane, and it was an indie film, no budget, but we had a really great and committed, nutty cinematographer who was also interested in like pyrotechnics and special effects. So we were doing a scene. It was a heist scene, and we had this great location. It's like an antique store, like almost like a pawn shop.
Yeah.
We had these great prop guns, and we didn't have a licensed armour on set, but we did call the police and let them know that we were doing the scene. So if people, in a small town, if people saw a robbery in progress, please don't send the tactical response teams or anything. So we made sure we kind of did all that, but we started experimenting with like lighting flashes, like sound activated flashes for the muzzle flash, and we used squibs, and we just put way more effort and work into making this particular short scene for this short film that didn't require that level. But you could see it was like people who really loved this stuff just nerding out. So that was really fun. I did a short commercial shoot where I was directing for a supercar rental company, which they had hired a racetrack for the day and brought a whole bunch of race cars. Basically gave me a radio and told me, what do you want to do with them? So I had like drone pilots and all these camera operators and all these stunt drivers, and I just had free reign to do some stunt driving. These Ferraris and Lamborghinis.
I need to test it, guys. I need to. Cinematic
that was quite fun. There's lots. As a camera operator, there's been a few things where I've had to like roll Steadicam or gimbal on the back of motorbikes. That's quite fun.
Cool.
Riding motorbikes. That's always good. So for events and things like that. The quality of the work is not so exciting compared to like narrative storytelling. But it's exciting when you've got a really professional motorbike rider riding you through these kind of tricky circumstances, lots of people and cars and lots of stuff, and you're on the back with the camera. It's like that's kind of fun as well. But every day for me, I really like being on set. It's the best office in the world in my mind, and even when it's cold and shitty. And I was telling you, I burnt my hand recently, and I was on set with my hand in a cup of ice, and it was freezing cold. And so while this hand I was trying to keep warm with a heat pack, this hand was like I was still having a great time. Every day.
No, we love making movies or being involved with anything that's
It's great to talk to people who feel the same way about that.
Thanks, Sean, for coming down today, and really appreciate all your knowledge and. And the course, if somebody wanted to do the course, film-based...
Yeah, so it's Australian film-based.
Australian film-based.
Google Australian film-based. We have also Sydney film-based and international film-based. But Australian film-based, you'll be able to see all the information for the short 3-month filmmakers course, dates and content, as well as other example films from students. And have a look. It's the evening course, so if you're working full-time, you can come and do it.
Yeah, it's perfect because me working full-time, it's obviously a perfect scenario for me to be able to attend something like that. And then obviously you do the filming on the weekends and stuff. So
usually it's Tuesday or Thursday evenings, depending on which course you're on, and then some Saturdays and some Sundays. So it's pretty approachable, and it's 3 months, and some people go into the course not knowing what they want to do, and at the end they realise, that was really fun. I learned a bit about the process, and they're happy with that. Others, it's a complete launchpad for them to change their career. So we have a couple of fairly well-funded feature films that are getting up now from people who've done the course over the last couple of years, which is really exciting, and so we're happy to play a role in sort of starting those filmmakers' careers. We've had people go on to Toronto Film Festival and Flickerfest, and all sorts of great success.
It's ideal for someone who, again, is, looking, not sure, but looking at getting some experience and then trying to understand where they potentially fit. And
definitely.
So it's great for that. So thank you very much again.
No problem.
And
thank you very much.
We might have you back at some stage again to have a chat and
review films. I'm happy to talk about films.
It's really good, actually.
Yeah, we'll have Sean to review some films. That would be absolutely awesome. Okay, thanks very much, and thank you everyone for attending. May, did you want to wrap it up?
Thanks for watching. Attending.
Attending our lovely
info session. No, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Bye.
Bye.